Welcome to episode 3 in this commercial Revit electrical project series. So here we are in our Snowden Towers electrical model. We're on second floor, level 2. And in previous episodes, we've covered the parking level and the first floor level. And first floor was a bit complicated. Luckily, on this floor, we only really have one floor level to worry about. Now, we do have a mezzanine here. This is a little eating area above a cafeteria. And then we have the rest of this plan, which is some apartment units. So let me jump over to the architectural plan so we can get a good overview of what we're looking at with all the room names and everything. So I like to have a PDF set of my architectural set when I'm working on it because you can't see all of this stuff in the model when it's linked in. So we need to take a look at the actual PDF. You can see we have all these other descriptors, things like open to below and things like that. So what we have here is a mezzanine level dining area. Above what's downstairs is a cafeteria. And we worked on this kitchen and the commercial areas here on the last episode. Go back to that if you want to see what we did there. But on this floor, we have that dining area. And of course, the elevator lets out into that. We have some stairwells, 3 of those, and then even a little bit of a stair here. We have now some housing units. We have here a studio unit. Unit 203, which is, again, just a studio with a kitchen and restroom. We have a 2-story studio unit. So this looks like the main floor, and then it goes up with a spiral staircase to a second floor or mezzanine. Here's another elevator that lets out into the what I would call the residential area. And then we have a live-work unit, where this may be where someone may live and have a studio or shop. Now over here, this big X in here typically means that it's open to below, and they actually say it here in this space, open to below. So these are 2-story high spaces. We won't really have much electrical connections. We're doing the power plants up in here unless we have some HVAC systems up in these areas. But that is what we're looking at, and we have one more live work unit here. Now, one note I'd like to point out is that if some of these residential units look identical to each other, we often do a shortcut where we only show the details and build out of one of each of these typical units rather than showing it multiple times. So as we go up the building, we may see, again here, see this studio unit 304 matches 204. We don't need to build this all out again. That's our shortcut that we used. And so you may make those same decisions. Same with this live work unit. If they're the same, we can have a note that says, see the typical unit build out. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We are going to put some panels in these apartment units. There will actually be a load center style of plug on breaker panel, but we'll put those in here as well, and we'll go from there. Now, what I want to show you is if we take a look at the section, and I'll do that in Revit, we can take a look at the section here. I've already got a section cut, so let's jump into that. And it's not set up with any great view filters or anything like that, so it looks kind of messy, but it gets the point across. We have down here our parking level, which we've done, our few levels of level 1, which varies by about 6 feet from low to high. Then we have this M1, which is the mezzanine level, which you can see here has our mezzanine level above the kitchen. And then about between 5, 6, and 8, 1, so about 2.5 feet above that is level 2. So we have a little bit of difference in these levels. Now we could create a plan view that shows that is set up in this mezzanine for that lower level. And we may actually need to do that. If we have receptacles down in this area here, we may not see those in our plan. So we will have to address that when we get into the power plan. But if we need to, we can create a plan region, a sub-region in here that has its own view range so that we can see our devices. So we'll take a look at that later on as we go. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, one thing I noticed too in my previous plan is I've got 2 sets of grids. And what I did not do yet is turn off the architectural grids. The ones that highlight that I can click are the grids that are in my electrical model. that I can move around and have control of. And I can decide if I want the grid bubble to show up down here or not, and I can move them around. I don't need the double grid. So what I need to do is go into my linked architectural model, turn grids off the category in that model. Well, because I'm using a view template, I need to go in here. I can't do it up here under visibility graphics. I go down to the view template, and in my 1/8 inch power plan, I go into the Revit links tab. And as you can see here, I have an architectural link and an HVAC link. And so we'll come back to that HVAC link here in a minute. We linked this HVAC model in the previous episode if you want to go back and see how we did that. But we have that in there so that we can connect their equipment. If we go to the architectural and we have it set up as a custom display settings, and the grids are an annotative element, an annotation category. It's set here for custom so we can get to these categories. We want to go down to grids, and we're going to turn the grids off. And we already have the grids off in the architectural. So what that means to me is we need to turn them off in the HVAC. So let's go into custom, to the annotation, set this to custom as well, and we need to turn the grids off here as well. There they are. See, those were on. So it wasn't the architectural that was the issue, it was and they're gone, the mechanical system. Next thing I like to do is jump in and throw in some room tags so we know what these rooms are, so we can tell our builder, our contractor, what these rooms are. So we just go through and do some room tags. Any area that's blue is actually a room, a Revit room that the architect put in, and this will reflect the same room name. So we will just get these labeled. Now, this is the cafe below. I can label that, and I can label the covered dining, the park. Let's get this stair. And here's our studio and our 2-story studio. This is the corridor, so I'm going to put it out here in the middle somewhere. I have another elevator, E2. Live work. This is some commercial retail area. And this is the commercial retail, and this is the residential lobby with the stair coming up. And this guy is our live work unit 202. So simple as that. We have room names escape out of there, and we can see those, and they are in our model, so we can move them around at will. Now, what you can also see is we have already linked in the HVAC. So this guy here, and I can't click on it because it's in a linked model. I can hover over one of the edges of this and hit tab a few times, and eventually there it lights up. So it's telling me it's a heat recovery unit HRU. If I click on it, I can actually get the details of that family that's in the HVAC link. So we can see some information. But we're going to be putting in receptacles and equipment connections and panels. Now this area already has a panel. In the first floor, we can see already we already have a panel K. So this whole sector we are hooking up to panel K. So we can go ahead and use that for this as well. But let's see what we want in here for receptacles. We're going to give receptacles to each of these, and these look like, this is probably a booth, and these are seating. There's probably tables here. We're going to put some receptacles along there. Now, what I can do is go down and grab a receptacle down from my families. My families is open, and I have electrical fixtures open. I've brought in my non-hosted duplex receptacle right here. Duplex receptacle, non-hosted. I can bring this in. Now I have another video that shows how to create non-hosted models, and I also hope to soon have a whole family of non-hosted models for purchase if you want to take a shortcut. But we're going to go ahead and bring in this standard non-hosted receptacle. And it's going on level 2. It's already set up for 1'6", which is fine. Now, we have to remember that we are actually on the mezzanine, so we will have to adjust this height for the mezzanine. But let's get receptacles put in, and we want to snap as close as we can to that wall. Because it's non-hosted, it won't actually stick to the wall. We have to place it on the wall ourselves. So we're going to put these here. Now, before I go further, I want to adjust the height. So I'm going to take my little section, move it back here. This is just a section I'm using for coordination purposes. I'm going to pull this back, and then I'm going to go back to my section and see if I can see my receptacle on that wall. Let's get to the right place up here. And I don't see it yet, so let me check my view settings. And I'm going to go to view template. I actually have a view template called section electrical distribution, but it has also electrical items. So there we go. And let me turn thin lines on because the scale we're out. There we go. There's my receptacle. And as you can see, it is high. It's up here by this window because level 2 is right there and it's 1.5 feet above level 2. We needed 1.5 feet above M1. So let's get the exact distance between these two. And from M1 to level 2 is 2.7 feet. So I need to lower this device by 2.7 feet. Or I can even just, get close. I'm about 2.6 away. So if I'm plus 1.6, I need to be minus 1 foot to get it closer. There we go. So that puts it approximately 18 inches above M2. So back to our floor plan. Let's see what we have. And here's our area, and we've lost sight of our receptacle. Now this is what I was afraid of with the difference in levels. So what we can see in this section is that the receptacle is below level 2. Now, a couple things we can do. We could go to level 2 and then lower the view depth, which lets us look below level 2. And you would do that if you were like on a ground floor and you wanted to see underground conduits, for example. Now, one thing I'd say about that, though, is it changes the line type. It changes the appearance of the devices that are below that level. And we don't want that. So our best solution is to create a plan region for this mezzanine. And this mezzanine goes down some steps. I think if we just leave it at the mezzanine level, we're fine. So we want to do that. From the mezzanine, we're going to change the view range. So let's take a look at second floor. What is the view range already of this view? We go here to view range within our view template. We can see that the bottom is associated level, which in this case is L2. Cut plane is 4 feet, and the top is a hard 11.6 feet. It's an actual hard dimension. It's not relative. We need to keep that in mind when we create the top of ours. We could just go up to level 3. So we'll see how that works. But what we want is just a plan region of this area here so that we can see our receptacles. So what we do is we go up to view, and under plan views, down here we have plan region. I have a whole video on how to deal with view range and plan region, which is a very critical thing to understand in Revit. That third dimension can really screw you up if you don't understand how to deal with it. So plan region, and it puts us into an edit mode, sketch mode. So I'm going to use the tool, the rectangle. I'm simply going to rectangle out my mezzanine, and it's going to include the elevator, which is okay. And I'm going to stop about here. We can move this around later. For now, we're just sketching it in. And then for now, I can also say, what do I want that view range to be? I can adjust it now or later. So we bring up the view range, and it gives us absolute levels. The bottom now, we want to drop it down to the M1 with 0 offset. So the bottom of our view is actually at the mezzanine level. Now the cut plane, we want relative to M1, and 4 feet is a typical cut plane. That's where it's going to cut the walls to help us see our plan. It will also dictate what we can see. Now the top, we can still have the top be relative to level 2 because the top is the same as the rest of the plan. So we can just leave that. We could also change the top to be level 3 with a 0 offset or a -1 inch offset. We can do whatever, but I think for now, let's leave it the same as the rest of this entire floor. And we're not going below M1 for a view depth. We're going to leave it at 0. So let's see what that does for us. Until I click finished, we won't see the results. So let's finish it and see what happens. Let me turn off thin lines. Now, what you see, this big green fat line, is the actual plan region boundary that I have bumped up in my view so that we can see them. It's typically a tiny little thin green line. Now, this doesn't get plotted or printed to PDF or anything like that. So it's just for an aid for us, but I like to highlight that because it's hard to see normally. So there, that shows that this area has a different view range, and now I can see my receptacle that's below level 2, and it appears with the right line weight. So now we can move on. This one is already set up with the proper elevation. Even though we have a planned region that affects the view range, we are still putting devices in that are relative to level 2, which is the associated level of this view. So keep that in mind. We've got two different things here. So I'm going to just simply right-click, create similar, and what that does is it gives me another one that's -1 foot below L2. It keeps the same height when I create similar, which is handy. So let's do that. We're going to put these in under these chairs, under these benches. Let's just add these. Now I can also just copy these. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm on a roll here. Now this guy will be here. I'm also going to throw one out in here for general use. And then this is all railing along here. So unless I was to throw some kind of floor boxes out here, I could put one on this column. So let me spin that around and put one here. And what these can be used for is cleaning, or even if you're sitting here, you could, plug a phone charger in there if you like, or hook up your tablet or laptop. Let's go ahead and turn these and put those under these two. I want to get it right on the wall. So we have kind of a double face. Again, non-hosted, we have to find the wall ourselves. So that seems like that would work out for now. We will, behind the scenes, we'd be working with our architect and our interior design team to figure out maybe some ideas, and with the owner to see what they want. So that's the basics of that. Now, the other piece we need in here is we have this mechanical unit that we looked at, and let's go ahead and tab over it again. It is named HRU 200A. So there must be, there's two of them in this 200 area. So let's go ahead and get that hooked up. So I'm going to connect this with my custom motor connection. So if we go down here to my families, and I've used this on the previous episodes, down here, ER, which means it's my custom electric rod version, motor connection. And you can see I have other HRUs already in here. We need a separate type for each connection because they could have different electrical characteristics and they have different mark numbers. So let's go ahead and take one of these in, HRU 107, bring it in, and it's a motor and disconnect symbol. And it's just a two-dimensional symbol that has an electrical connection. And again, this is just a custom family. I have a video that shows how I create this. If you want to make your own, I'll link that in the description below. But it has some settings here. I can unfuse it by clicking off the fused and just leave it with a disconnect. I could even turn the disconnect off if I don't need it. And then the type parameters of this are a load classification, which I set to HVAC, single phase or three phase, and now it could even be two phase, which in Revit language is a 208 single phase connection with two poles. But we have set these up as three phase, and we only gave them a motor load of 3 kVA. This little guy here, equip, is a flag that I put under type comments that tells my mechanical equipment connection schedule to let this piece of equipment show. I'll show you that here in a minute. And then the type mark that I'm using with my tag is here. So I need to duplicate this and make a new type called HRU 200A. Again, anytime you have something different in your type parameters, you need to create a separate type. So duplicate it and create your own. And I need to retell it to go to my equipment schedule. And as you notice, I also can put it on a kitchen schedule. I show that in previous episodes if you want to check that out. And then again, this is what I'm going to use for my tag. Now, some people use the type as a tag and some people use a type mark. I use type mark because sometimes I want the type to say something different than I want in my actual tag. But that's also very customizable. 200A. And then what I can do now is I can go up to tag by category and I have my equipment connection set up, or fixture set up, to show this kind of symbol, hex symbol around the name. And that's what I use to tag it. And I can make this arrow end, I can make it a free end. Right now it's attached end on this leader. I can also make it float with a free end. Gives me a grip that I can move around and point to that if I want. I can also put a little shoulder down here like that. But that's how I hook that guy up. Now let's look at this other piece of equipment down here and tab over it, highlight it. It's HRU 200B. So that's the other one. And let's go ahead, and I'm just going to right click this and say create similar. Put this here. Now some people get picky about where they show this disconnect. I mean, this is only a two-dimensional object. I'm not trying to absolutely show where this disconnect goes on this unit. Again, if I had fixture cut sheets for this unit, I could take a look at it, see where the disconnect should be, where the connection point is. For our purposes, I don't get to that level. That's something that the contractor can detail out in the field. So, because, you know, this is just a basis of design unit anyway. It could end up being a different unit, and the connection point may be a different place. Anyway, just that's my speech on connections. So I'll try to get it close. This is diagrammatic. And then I need to create another type. So duplicate this one, and let's call it B. Revit tries to create the next one, but fails there. And we want this to be on the equipment schedule, and we want it to have type mark as the same, 200B. Okay, there. And let's get that tagged like that. And then I like the free end, and get a little bend to that. Just my personal preference on how it looks. So that's all we need for this sector of this floor. Let's go ahead and take a look at that equipment schedule. I've covered this in the previous episodes, but let's take a look again. So up here under schedules, we have the kitchen equipment schedule. Well, we need one for a mechanical equipment schedule. We could start with the kitchen equipment schedule and modify it for our mechanical equipment. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. Make a copy. There we go. Now we're going to call this mechanical equipment schedule, and it means mechanical equipment connection schedule. So we can say connection just to help delineate it from, you know, the HVAC designers will have an actual schedule of the mechanical equipment. And we can do the same here with our kitchen. Let's go ahead and do that. Make this title nice and long. All right, so let's double click mechanical equipment schedule, and there it is. Now, as a review, what we have is, and you can go back to the previous episode, or I even have a separate video where I show how to create this kind of equipment schedule. This schedule is drawing data from the model. I've not typed any of this stuff in here separate except for this feeder. This feeder here is just text that I type in. The rest of this is drawn from the families in the model. Now, some of this I can change here, which actually changes it in both places. So just remember that a schedule is very powerful in that it reflects information from the model, and it's a two-way street here. Now, this one, we don't want to show kitchen equipment. We want to show mechanical equipment. Well, how do we deal with that? What we did on this, or if we go over here to the filter, there's a filter setting. What we've done to filter what shows up in this schedule is we've looked at that type comments section. You recall we have the type comments in our mechanical unit. So if we go to this guy, edit type, type comments is a parameter that we have set to say equip. That's something I made up. And then this schedule looks at that type comment, and it says if it equals kitchen, then we want to show it in our kitchen schedule. Well, we're making a mechanical equipment schedule, so we want it to equal the other flag, equip. Now, if it says equip, it shows up in this plan, and simple as that, there we go. Everything else is the same. So it shows the electrical data for the equipment for each unit. It even shows if it's connected to a panel and circuit. Now, the first floor I've already connected. It looks like I did not connect 107 yet, so we'll need to go connect that. But all the connections and everything shows. And I haven't typed in descriptions. I can type a description in here and just call this heat recovery unit, HRU. Now it says this change will be applied to all the elements of this type, HRU 105, which is fine. It's a type parameter. You'll get this warning every time you change a type parameter. And there. Now, if I go back to HRU 105, you'll see that that's changed in that. So let's go ahead and change ours. Now you might think I have to type this in again. Well, luckily you get a drop down. Heat recovery unit. Okay, same here. Go down to heat recovery unit. Okay. I've changed the description for these. Now if I go back to look at my 200A and B, click on this, edit type, right there, description. It changed it in both. So these dialogues are just looking behind the scenes at a database of all this information. So that's one of the powerful things about the Revit software, is that it's reading its database and we don't have to type in a bunch of things a bunch of different times. And with the associated errors that can happen. So that's equipment connections, and that's the schedule. And eventually we will go in and type in some feeder sizes, which I use a feeder schedule, a text-based feeder schedule that will tell them what the 20-2 means. It means it's a half-inch conduit with two number 12s and a number 12 ground. So I use a schedule-based. So back to our floor plan. Now what we want to do here is we can circuit these. In this series, I'm actually going beyond just schematic design or design development. I'm going to actually show getting into what I call CDs, or construction documents, that we are showing devices and circuiting them as we go, rather than a separate phase later. So we want to circuit these, and we're going to keep them in panel K, which is below, and we saw that. So let's go ahead and circuit up some receptacles. Now, these are design-based decisions on how many receptacles you want connected to a circuit. You follow NEC rules. There's also just rules of thumb, things like that. These are all set up. Let's make sure they're set up properly. 120 volts, 180 VA, and we have them in a receptacle. That looks like what we want. So what I'm going to do is, the order I do things is I like to take one and hit the power button to connect it. Find my panel. There's K. And so that's connected to panel K. Over here, panel K, and it assigned circuit 37, which was the next available circuit. And it put it in the order that I already set up to go down the odds first and then down the evens. If you think of a panel schedule as odds left, evens right. Now, I could just end this and say I'm done. But what I like to do now that I have one connected is hit edit circuit. And then it automatically says add to circuit. Now I'm going to add some more. And one thing you can tell is the ones that are not on my circuit are kind of grayed out. So it makes it easy to pick them and see. Now also you'll notice that it won't let me pick anything else. I can't pick even a tag because I'm in circuiting mode, where it only lets me pick. So it kind of helps with selection. I can only, if I'm way out here, I would start picking up other items that are out here if I had notes and tags. So this way I can just pick these. So let's put these 4 on a circuit. So I'm done circuiting those. Well, nothing looks different. So what I need to do is tab over this, hover over one of these, hit tab until I see the dashed circuiting. Click on it. Now I have selected the electrical circuit. Again, like we've done on the previous episodes, we're going to add arc wire. You can have wire or not, it's up to you. And I have a whole video on how this wiring works. Recall that we are drawing conduits or cables, not just wires. There's wires inside here. But what we are showing is the actual cable, or in this case, with a commercial project, we've got MC cable or conduit system. So I've got that routed. You can use the grips to move things around and change the arc. We can see that we have a ground, a neutral, and a hot in this home run. That's all set up behind the scenes in our template. And then we want to tag it. Now, do we want a leader on that tag? We don't, so I'm going to uncheck the leader. And I have this set up to tag home runs with a panel-circuit number, as you can see there. Again, that's all customizable. And I have videos that you can check out to see how to do that. Simple as that. Now I can go to my next ones and go here, and let's power it up. Panel K, it remembers, so we're good there. And it picked the next odd number, which is 39. I'm going to edit circuit, add the rest by default. And here we go, adding the rest of these receptacles. Finish editing the circuit, tab, get to the circuit, and hit the arc wire. Voila, we have that. Now we can change where this hits. I can put it over here. I can get my arc going like this, so I can make it look somewhat pretty. I get picky about how these look sometimes, probably too picky. Let's go with that. And some people just put K39 by each receptacle, and you can do that as well. And I have videos on my channel that show how you can create a tag that just tags each receptacle with its circuit, and you don't need the arcs. So you can do this however you like to. It varies firm to firm. Let's do one more. Circuit these guys. Power, same thing. Edit. Let's add these. Finish it. Tab over it. Hit the arc wire. And it's putting an arrow, home run arrow, at the point closest to the panel, which is below. Now, also in my wiring video, I talk about the voltage drop calcs and the circuit path editing, things like that. I'll put a link to that video in the description. And just to indicate that when it comes to voltage drop calcs, Revit is not great. And most people that I know either do their own voltage drop calcs still with an Excel or Docs spreadsheet. And there's third-party programs out there that will help you with voltage drop calcs. So check out that video to see what's going on there. Let's go ahead and add this. I'm close enough to my panel here where I'm not worried about any voltage drop issues with these short branch circuits. So there I have those connected. Now let's connect these mechanical units. Same idea. Click on the mechanical connection point, hit power. The panels, by the way, that show up here in this drop-down are only panels that have the same voltage characteristics as what I'm connecting. If I had this set up as 480 volt, these 208 panels wouldn't show up. So if you don't have panels showing up, then you have a mismatch between your voltage or even phase settings. I have videos, of course, on how to deal with that whole setup and distribution systems. So we're going to connect it also to panel K. It's already connected. And now it's connected at 2, 2, 4, and 6. It knows it's a 3-phase connection, so it's done that automatically. And that's the only thing I want on that circuit. So I'm just going to say, go ahead and arc it. Now, because I have an equipment schedule, I don't really need to call out what circuit it's going to, what panel and all that. That's why I have an equipment schedule. However, I like to see a home run on here, at least to show the panel and circuit. If it's not too crowded, I don't mind showing it. And I'm not worried about the home run here being different than the mechanical equipment schedule or even the panel schedule, because they are all drawing their information from the same database. So I don't have the issue of mismatch like you did back in CAD days if you were doing things like that. So I don't mind showing this here. Now the wire size and all that will be taken care of in that equipment schedule with that feeder tag. But at least here, I think it's helpful to see where this is going. Again, this guy gets connected, power, arc wire, and we can move that around to show it how we like. And let's go ahead and do this. Now it's showing it as a 4-wire home run. I may only need 3. It's just a hazard of Revit adds that neutral in there. Now I can go here and hit plus and minus to add more hots or reduce the number of hots, but I can't change the neutral. So we're just going to be stuck with the neutral. Again, my feeder schedule will dictate how many wires it actually gets. So we can actually turn those ticks off in home runs if we want, but I'll leave them on for now. So we are done with that sector of this plan. Now we'll move on to the rest of this level. And let's take a look first. We have some corridor spaces. Now this here, let me right click and do create similar. And see, this area is white. It doesn't even have a room name. So this may be called something else. We don't know. It's just going by the last, see the last one I was in is it just hangs in there. So we don't know what that is. I'm going to go ahead and say it's part of the corridor, and typically you'll want receptacles in your corridors for cleaning. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, do I want to copy this receptacle? I don't, because it's set at a height for this mezzanine. So let's go ahead and start with a new receptacle. I could go down here and just copy one of these receptacles. And let's check that one. See, it's 1'6" above its level. So I could just say, create similar, pop it up to my second floor and go from there. And it will change to my current level, which is nice. So let's go ahead and put this over on this wall. And then in my corridor, I typically like to, I maybe have like 50 feet between receptacles. Again, these are design decisions. So what's our length? We can go up here to this little align dimension, and then we can click on pieces of the model, or even the architectural link, and just see how long that corridor is. It's 87 feet. So I'll want 2 receptacles in here. So let's right click here, create similar, and I want these about 50 feet apart. So I'm going to put one here, and then down here, let's go ahead and get one about here. Again, you would normally talk with your architect and interiors folks and figure out exactly what you want there. Now, the residential lobby is just stairs coming up, and we are in the second floor. So I'm going to put my own little note here, something like all caps open to below, just to help our electrical folks know what's going on. And I can actually copy this note from here to here. And then also we have another one here to show that these are all the second story. Now we will have some mechanical units to deal with here. So let's take a look at this commercial retail space. Hover over this, see what this is. It is HRU 108A. And I'm going to figure that that is 108B. There we go. So let's get some equipment connections here. We can right click this guy, create similar, and then go down here. Now I could turn this if I want. If I knew exactly where this is, I can do that. So I'll go ahead and do it here just for example, but in reality, it's not going to matter much in my situation. So again, what was this called? This was called 108A. So we want to duplicate this, HRU 108A. We're saying these are all the same. What I reviewed in previous episodes is we have PDFs of this mechanical, but we don't have the equipment schedule. We don't know the VA of these units, so we've made an assumption. We want to make sure this is on the equipment schedule, and we want to call this HRU 108A. And we'll do the same here. 108B. Same thing over and over. As you know, doing electrical design, there's a lot of repetition, especially as we get into some of these apartment units. And I must say, try doing a 30-story apartment, and it can drive you bonkers someday with the repetition that's involved. Okay, let's go ahead and tag these. And this time we do want a leader. So if we don't want the leader, we can just say no leader. What happens if we put it in without the leader? Well, what we can do is we can add the leader now. So once it's not up here, but over here now, we can say add the leader line. So you can add the leader once it's already in. And then I want to free end this. There's no way to make that free end stick to every one of these. I'll just point it to the disconnect. And then let's right click. We can just do a create similar for this guy. And let's say we're going to put that one down here. And we're going to add the leader. And it is free end. What happened to it? There he is. And you can put these wherever you like. Now we need to circuit this. Now let's see what circuit we have in Commercial Retail 108. Over here, and what we learned in our previous episode is that because these are on different floor levels, different levels of level 1 even, we have 3 different sectors. So we need to go to first floor plan block 37. We need 108. Here's 108. And what we had done in 108 is we'd put a panel in, separate panel P108, a 12208 three-phase panel. So we are going to get to panel 108. So let's go back to our second floor. These guys get connected to 108. So let's start with A, power, to now P108. There it is. Simple as that. It assigns the next available 3-phase circuits, arc wire it, and I can move this connection point and then tag it without a leader. And it puts the panel dash, the 3 phases are listed. And we'll do the same with this one. Power, let's arc wire and move things around a little bit because I'm picky, and get this up here. Remind you that we can jump into these panel schedules and move things around. Once they're connected, it automatically connects them to these circuits. So I can't tell them what circuits I want when I connect it, but I can quite easily move things around. So that's the workflow with Revit circuits. So if I wanted HVAC units to start over here, for example, on the right side of this, I could simply take that, move it to, and it gives me some green areas where I can move it right there. So I can easily move these around. So don't worry about it automatically doing that. Now, also I need to review my circuit breaker sizes, and I'm okay with 20 amps on these, but if these were larger, I could just type this in and put a 30 or 50, whatever it is. So that's how I can change these. You can also change it in the actual floor plan view. If I hover over the circuit itself till I get a dashed line, now I could go into the rating and frame size of this breaker that's feeding. So I can change it here as well. Now, another thing I failed to do so far is change the load name. Instead of just HVAC, which happens to be the load classification, I want to actually change the load name to display on the panel to let them know what that circuit serves. So for example, I want to tell them that this serves HRU 108A. Apply that. And I want this one, hover over it, select it. I want this to be HRU 108B. Apply that. Now, if I go back to that panel schedule, which I can get to from here, now it doesn't just say HVAC, it says the actual unit. So we want to make sure we put something descriptive in to each of these. So, and it's easiest to do it in that plan view rather than from this view, because when I'm in this view, I may forget what that circuit serves. Another thing is, if you click on this panel schedule and I want to find where is HRU 108, I can go back to my plan views and try to find it. Now, it showed part of it. There's the 108 part, but where's the rest of it? So I need to go around to my plans, and there it highlighted it in blue. So if you're trying to find some connections, that's a nice way to do it too, is click on the circuit in the panel, and it will highlight it for you in your plan view. So just some little tips and tricks as we go. And before we go any further on this, I want to point out that there's another way we can do this two-story space. I work with some clients that prefer to have a space like this all on one level. For example, there's no floor between first and second floor of this commercial retail. It's just 2 stories tall. So to have the power broken up into 2 different plans is a little awkward for their installers. So what they would want me to do is go back down to first floor, and this would be in block 37, and show those connections here on this one plan of the entire space. But because this isn't tall enough in here, the view range isn't high enough, we can't see those. So I'm going to show you the example of how to deal with that. So again, second floor, is where it shows, but we want to show it on the first floor. So let me show you how we can do this. We need to again do a plan region. And we're going from, let's see, grid C in between 6 and 8. So here's 6 and 8. 6 and 8, we know that. And we need to go up to grid C. So we're going to create a plan region again so that we can change the view range. Plan region, and we are going to go rectangle again from here, grid C, down to the front of our store on that grid 8. Now, how high do we want to go? Well, we want to go from this bottom L137 up to, we want the top now to go clear up to level 3, and maybe just, I'd like to lower it like 6 inches below so that I don't get floor boxes, for example, that may be in level 3. Apply it and say, okay, and then go ahead here and check mark. And what we do notice is that now we do see our equipment connections that were up high. Now I don't see the mechanical unit up there, so we will have to see what's going on with that. We want to be able to see these. Let's see if we can tell how high these are. These are up at 18 foot 8 above level 1. So let's make sure we're up at least 18 foot 8. We may need to redo this to an absolute. So let's go with top at block 37 to maybe 19 feet. There we go. So now we can see those units. And we can continue on with our circuiting. So what would happen up here is we don't need all of our circuiting shown here. So we're going to get rid of these, just delete them. And then we also want to apply a view range to this space as well so that we don't see this. We want to increase the view range, the height of the view range down below, and decrease the height of the view range here so that we don't see these elements. And we could also manually go in here, hover over them like that. If I right click on that, I can say hide in view element, and it hides it. That's another way that you can do a one-off, or in this case maybe 4-off hiding of things in a view. Now you do that, well, how do you find it again if you do need it? Well, down here at the bottom, there's this little light bulb. It says, reveal hidden elements. That's a trick where you can click on there, and depending on the size, it'll take a second, but it's showing the things that are turned off by category or they're hidden in elements. This is even showing things like the origin points and the survey point. It's showing lighting. It's showing all these things that are actually turned off in this plan. So this is a nice way that you can find some things that maybe are hidden. So if you ever want to go back and turn this back on, that's how you would do it. And you could just hover over it and right click and say unhide in view the element. And that puts it back to normal. Then just click on the light bulb again to turn that off. So let's go ahead and try the plan region. It's a good practice to learn how to do these plan regions because this frankly stumbles a lot of people on Revit projects dealing with this third dimension. So it's good practice. We're going to do it there. And we're going to make the view range from this level 2. And we're going to make the cut plane at like 1 foot. And the top is going to be at 2 feet. Apply it and check it. There. Why do we see these? Well, we see these because they are actually installed at level 0 elevation. They're a two-dimensional object, but they're actually in the model. They're not an annotation. So these things end up being down at 0. So there's a trick to this view range that we need to make the bottom 1 foot above the floor. There we go. So there's a trick, a way to hide something by view range intentionally. Usually it happens by accident. So there's that way, or you could just do the hide elements. But so this is a way that we can get those shown down below. And then here, we can go ahead and do our tags, because as we know, tags are an annotative element that only shows up in this view that we put them in. So we can do this, and we can do another one. And then we can do the circuiting, tab over the circuit, arc wire, and do this just like we did before. Let's do it over here. Arc wire, get that moved up. And then we can do our tag without leader to these home runs, like we did before. But now it's down here with the rest of the electrical, the receptacles, and everything all in this one floor. So I wanted to point that out. That comes up now and then. So back to second floor. We've already done this. Now, what about this one? This commercial retail also. So let's click on that. As you can see, this is just a portion of that level 1 that was at a higher floor level. So in here, now is this whole space, except for the stairs, this whole space is up high. So we need to do a plan region for this whole commercial retail space. And we'll probably do the same 19 feet. Now we have to remember though that we do want the restrooms to show. We want the cut line to happen in these restrooms. Let's go to plan region. I'm going to stay outside the restrooms for now. Let's see how that works. So I need to actually sketch a boundary. And I can stay in the middle of these walls. And I can go down to here. Again, I can modify this once I've already drawn it. Here. And then I want to stay kind of in the middle of this restroom. We will see. When I get up to here, it looks like I intersect properly, so do that. Now I didn't change the view range yet, so let's go ahead and do that now. Edit view range. We want to go from this block at 4 feet, and the top now is going to be, we decided 19 feet. So we're just raising the roof. So it looks like, because this boundary does cut through this mechanical unit, that it shows up without affecting how our restroom looks. And then I need to, of course, redo some of this so that it's not in the way. We can do something like this, get that GFCI. We just move things around to make it look right. Now I can connect these two units up properly. Let's see what they are. Tab. This is HRU 109B, and this is 109A, I would assume. Get down here and do it right. There we go. 109A. All right, so let's do that. We will get the connection from here, create similar, hit spacebar to rotate it to 109A, just like we did before. Duplicate it, 109A. We want it to show up in our equipment schedule. Oops, wrong one. Show up in our equipment schedule, and there's 109A. And let's give that a tag with a leader. And the same thing up here. If we show that over here, 109B, duplicate it. Equip it, and 109B, and tag it over and over again. There we go. And that's too close. Let's move this out a little bit. There we go. And then we need to circuit these. So we're going to circuit this one to 109, panel 109, power it to panel P109. And we want to call this HRU 109A. This is one place where we do have to retype things, is in load names of panels. The default is just the load classification, or sometimes it'll bring in the room name. So we do have to type it in there. And let's get a home run on here without leader and a tag. We'll get a tag on there without leader. And same thing here. Let's get this guy connected. Power it up. HRU 1099B, if I can type. And then arc it. And tag the home run. Now that gets a little crazy. I'm going to go ahead and move this down here, and it's going to move my tag, but that's okay. This guy, and I can move. Here's the point. Again, if you can't see that point, hit thin lines, and then you'll be able to see that point much better. Now you can see this tag moves around as I move that arrow. So I just need to bring it back up in here. Something like that. So now things are all circuited there for that second floor plan. Now we need to again fix this so it doesn't show. This one I'm just going to do a different method just to demonstrate that I can put hide and view the element and hide and view the element. There we go. So a couple different ways that we can hide those. So now to the rest of this floor, these corridor receptacles we put in, we need to connect those somewhere. So we can either have a panel on this floor that serves the common spaces, but frankly, we're talking one circuit and maybe eventually one lighting circuit. It's not worth a whole panel. What typically can happen on a project like this is the common spaces will be powered by maybe a panel on every other floor, every third floor, or even all from the first floor if it's not super tall. We also have to consider that the lighting in this corridor will be on an emergency backup of some kind, so it won't even connect to this normal panel. So we will connect this up to a panel that we have down on the first level. So we can go look at that, and actually it's in the parking level is where our main electrical room is down here. So we have a house panel down here, HDP. We can connect it to that just like we did the rest of these. So let's just go take those down to HDP. So back up to our second floor power plan. We're going to connect these receptacles. And again, I just connect one first, power it up to HDP. And I'm going to call this receptacle. And this is going to be corridor, second floor corridor. I don't use room numbers typically because, they don't show up in the real world when you're out walking this building. There's no sign that says you're in corridor 201. So it really doesn't make sense. Now, an apartment unit may be different because this may have a unit 203 badge on it. So that makes sense. But when I'm referencing for panel schedules, I like to have some kind of a real world descriptive name for the end users to relate to and any future electricians that come in here. So let's go ahead and edit that circuit by adding more. So let's add the rest of these two guys and finish editing. And then let's go ahead and get an arc in here. And of course I put the arc here because our panel is down underneath here. So let's go ahead and modify some of this circuiting. So now let's look at what we need to do for the rest of this floor. We need to connect some residential style dwelling units, these apartments. Now these are going to have their own load center type panel in them. Now there's a couple different ways that this can be done. First of all, if we just use a panel board, a Revit panel board in here, and start connecting circuits, the calculations that get done are commercial calculations. They're based upon 180 VA per receptacle. They're adding up nameplates for equipment. It's commercial demand factors. So it doesn't lend itself to dwelling units. So if you look in the NEC, is a whole different way to calculate things. In fact, it's a whole different way to calculate multiple dwelling units connected to one distribution board or one meter center. So we can't use our standard built-in calculations with Revit. There's a few ways around this. I've seen some people go through and customize a panel schedule with custom formulas and things like that, custom load classifications, to help do those calculations. What we use in our firm is a room-based calculation in a separate load center connection, which I'll show you. Then we use a special annotation that does the actual room-based calcs. So what we use in our firm is, I'll show you, is a load center connection that we customized. And let's go down here to electrical. It's actually a fixture. It's not a equipment. It's not a panel board. It is just a connection. So you'll see here, ER load center connection. And we already have a basic in here called studio panel, so we can bring that one in. And it actually is face-based. So it needs to mount to a wall. It's one of the few hosted items I actually use anymore. So we want to put this guy on a wall. I'm going to say it's going to go on this wall right here, this end wall near the kitchen where all the loads are. So you put that there. It's a little recessed panel. And it's at 5 feet to the top. Maybe we can go a little bit higher for that. So what it has is an instance parameter of the dwelling unit area, because that will vary room to room. This is a studio, but they both have different square footage. So it needs to be an instance variable. Now here's where the magic is. If you go to edit type, you will see in here, we have parameters for all of the residential loads. So cooking load would be a range, and it's usually 8 to 10 kW. So we put a 9 kW. A dishwasher, we average, something like 500. The same with a disposal. That's probably too much, and we put in disposal. The dryer, clothes dryer, we put in kind of a standard code load for that. Now heating or cooling, we need to make sure we get that put in properly. So as we look at the unit, it'll probably be that unit hanging from the ceiling that's in there, HRU. Kitchen is 2 kitchen circuits, and this is all per the NEC calculations. Laundry is required to have a 1500 watt laundry circuit. The microwave is around 1500 watts. Any other motors, like a little exhaust fan in the bathroom, things like that. Maybe a hood fan over the range. And then if we have water heating built in, if we don't have central water heating, that gets in here. And this is set up for 208, 2 poles. We don't have a 240 volt system here because we're on a commercial 208 system. And the load classification is dwelling unit. So this will show up as an equipment connection on the distribution panel or meter center that we feed it from as a dwelling unit, and it will apply the proper calculations to the connected load of all the dwelling units. So these are just connected loads. There's no calculations here with diversity. That happens in another place, which I'll show you. But we need connected loads for our service calcs and our distribution or meter center calcs. So that's what this does. So I'm going to say, okay, and I say we put a separate type for each kind of unit because studios typically have one set of heating, and a 1-bedroom would have usually more heating, 2-bedroom, more heating, etc. So that's why we have separate types for different types of rooms. But for different square footage of studios, that gets handled by this instance parameter. Now, how can we figure out the square footage of this studio unit? One way is you can go click on the room name and room tag, and the built-in room tag has a room tag with area option, another type. Click on that, and there we go. 593. Now you can see the red line. It pretty much stayed there. It even took out one little bit of that wall. But I mean, it's close enough. We can even say 600 square feet if we want to be conservative. So there, 600 square feet is that unit. And then we can go back and put this back to the normal. Or you can just leave it on. I don't have a problem just leaving that on there if I have room. So 600 square feet. So what I'm going to do is click on here, put 600, enter. And you can see that the connected load, again, this is not diversified, is 30,400 VA at 146 amps. Now, again, when we diversify this with our separate spreadsheet type connection, it will lower that down, most likely to below 100 amps. And then I like to tag this with a leader. And it's a question mark right now because I did not fill in the type mark. This is again, this is just equipment connection. It's not a panel board. So we're going to call this studio panel. And I say panel, even though it's a load center. seems to make more sense to the end user that that's just a circuit breaker panel. So there, that's that. And we're going to need one of these in every single apartment unit. So I do show these in every unit, even if I have some typical units. So let's get these installed in every unit. And we're going to circuit these panels and load centers later when we start adding some more distribution gear. But create similar. I need to find a wall. And I've worked with the architect and the interior designers, and we've decided we want this thing right here. Now I need to tab to get to the right height of this wall. There it is. And this is my love of hosted elements right there. Is that fight that we have. Tab, there it is. Boom, okay. I do need to create an unhosted load center. I can see that. So there is that one. Now let's see what the square footage of this studio is. It's the same. Now, it's the same on the first floor, although we have a 2-story studio unit. So we need to take the second floor of this unit into consideration along with it. So how do we get to that? That's going to be up on the next level, 3rd floor plan. This guy here, and let's go ahead, we're jumping ahead, but let's go ahead and get a room name, room tag in here, so we know it's the same unit. There we go. So as we can see, it's not a full 2nd story, it only has kind of a mezzanine. So how do we figure out the square footage of this mezzanine? If we do it here, we're going to get the entire room again. So we don't want that. Let's undo that. We just want this portion. Well, what we can use is a region here called a filled region. If we click on that, it puts us into edit or sketch mode. We can trace this 2nd story, this mezzanine, to get an idea of the square foot. So I just use the line tool, and I'm just going to roughly sketch it. Just use some lines and approximate how big this thing is. There. Now it's a filled-in region, but over here, it says area is 282 square feet. So we've got 280 plus our 600, so we have 880 square feet. And I don't need to save this region, I can just delete it. But 882, let's remember that. 882, and go down to 2nd floor and put that in here. 882. Now it's only changing this one panel, this one load center, because it's an instance parameter. And again, we'll tag this with studio panel. Do it like that. So let's look at the next room here. We have a live work unit, and it looks like it's a single level. And it looks like it's only going to have one HVAC unit in it. So we can say that this is like a studio as well. So we are going to put this guy over here. Create similar. And where do we want that? We're going to put that here by the oven. Right there. And the square footage on this will be 1105. So click on here, 1105. Enter. Apply it. There we go. And it's still a studio, so I think studio panel works. And then we have another live work unit down here. I was going to say this one looks very much like just a rotated image of that, but it's got a different shape. Look at this. It is a totally different unit and probably has a different square footage. 839. Yes, it's smaller. Let's go ahead and get that load center in here, down here by the range. There it goes. You can do it. Right there. Okay, studio panel. That is the load centers for these. Again, we'll connect these up to a meter center and all that when we get further along. But we need to actually show some build out of these typical rooms. Now, should I do it right here on this plan? Well, you can, and then you could do some kind of a circle it and put a note that says typical for, 600 square foot studio unit. And that would be typical for the one above, because if we look on the 3rd floor, it's the same thing. What we have decided to do, which a lot of architects will do as well, is they will take each typical unit, enlarge it to maybe something like 1/4 inch to the foot scale, have it on a separate sheet. They may have the floor plan and the ceiling, reflected ceiling plan separate. We're going to take that approach. We are going to enlarge these and put them on a separate sheet. So I need a separate view for this. Well, how can I get a separate view? What I can do here, and I did it on previous episode where I enlarged the kitchen area, we use what's called a call out. So if I go to view, here's another kind of view. It's a call out view. Creates, well, this one's a rectangular call out, and a call out's just a place that we circle and say that this is going to be on another sheet. So I'm going to go just outside these walls like that, and I can change this again. This is sketching a rectangle with curved edges. So something like that. And then it's hard to see because it's thin right now, but down here is a little circle. And this little target will actually, and we won't see that green line, this little target will fill in with the actual sheet and detail number that this ends up on when we drag an enlarged view onto a sheet. Now what this did is it created another view over here. Look at this, second floor plan power call out 1. That's the separate view that it created of this room. So if I was to double click on that, there it is. Now there's a couple things I want to do here. First, I want a different scale. Now because I still have my view template here in the bottom right of power plan 1/8 inch, I need to change that. So now I need a separate view template. And remember, view templates are very important. I want it to be a 1/4 inch. So I can just make this a power plan 1/4 inch. Right here. And that's what we used for our kitchen before. So let's just make this a power plan 1/4 inch. There we go. And we see all the annotations shrunk because this is actually a larger plan. Now, we don't really need grids in an enlarged plan because this is going to be a typical unit. You don't need to identify where in the building it is because it's in multiple places. So we're going to turn the grids off. Now, that's why we actually need to create a separate kind of view template for our units. If we turn the grids off in this plan, I'm going to be turning the grids off in my enlarged other plans, like my kitchen. And I want grids there because that's not a typical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. Now, if I just hit duplicate, I get a blank name. Well, I don't want to have to type all this in. I'm lazy. So I'm going to go to first, rename, and go ahead and copy that name. Get out of there. Now I go to duplicate, and I can paste this in, right-click paste, or Control-V in Windows. I'm going to call this Unit Power Plan 1/4 inch. So it's a different view template. Still the same scale, but I want to override my annotation to turn off the grids. Go down to G. There we go, grids. Okay, it turns off my grids. And I don't need this section visible, so what I'm going to do is just hide this element here. So there we have our enlarged plan. Now, do I want a room tag in it? No, because it would put a room name on it, and this is going to be typical. So what we have is we can see our load center, so I'm going to go ahead and tag that again, studio panel. I do want to get some connections in here. If we don't know what all this stuff is, we can go to the architectural plan and see if they have any information about what this is. We can kind of tell by the symbols that this is a range and this is the dishwasher. This is most likely a refrigerator. And we can also tab over these things until we get to it. And tall cabinet, double door with glass. So that's a cabinet. So, it makes you wonder, where is the refrigerator in this place? So let's go and see what the architects say about this. So over here, I have an architecture plan. And there's the studio. Do we have, I'm looking for something like this. This symbol here is elevation symbol. And I don't see that in this studio unit. They've not elevated this kitchen. The power of Revit is I can actually just do that myself. So here we go. I find that interior elevations get a little wonky. So I'm just going to use this section. And let's just drag it across here. Now, how deep do I want the section to go? Here's how deep it is. I just want to go to the wall. I don't need to see into the restroom. Double click on this and see what I get. Now, it's going to give me the full height of the building. And I want to narrow that down for my purposes, just so it's not hard to draw. Let's go down to level 2. There we go. Level 2. Okay, so the refrigerator looks like it's right here. And here's the stove. Now, I think the dishwasher is here. And I can tab. There we go, dishwasher. I can tab till I hit, oops, that's too much. Hit just that, and that's the refrigerator. Here's our cabinet. And then you can see in this elevation, I have my lights that I put in another video. So let's go back to our second, I'm going to get rid of third floor plan. Let's go back to second floor plan. And the refrigerator is right here. So we're going to start showing some receptacles for this stuff in here. Now we can just use our standard receptacle with 180 VA. We are not actually going to circuit these to the load center. They are just going to be symbols to show the installers that we need receptacles. So let's go to duplex receptacle. I have my non-hosted receptacle again that we used earlier. Standard. We're going to put one, space, one here for the refrigerator. I want one here for the dishwasher. Now which surface I put it on. And now we don't know if we have a disposal or not. I'm going to assume that we do. Now that's under counter stuff. Now we also need above counter. Remember, this is above the counter. We need receptacle above the backsplash here. And on the other side of the sink, you need here for sure. And then the other side of the sink, if you look at the NEC rules, you have to have at least a foot of counter space to need a receptacle. Well, between the sink and the oven, this is pretty small. So it's up to you whether we put a receptacle in there or not. It may not be required by code. I'm going to go ahead and throw one in there. Someone could set some small coffee maker or something in here. So we're going to do that. See how this is pretty small? But I want to use my counter. This is actually above counter receptacle, space, for here. So it's a different symbol and it's a different height. And then for the dishwasher between the refrigerator and the sink, I want to center it. So it's going to be probably like right here. So it starts to get kind of busy, even at 1/4 inch. But these are approximate. These aren't dimensioned. And then for the range, we're going to use a 208 single phase or 2-pole connection for the range. Now, what can you use for that? So again, since I'm using my custom content for this project, I have a special receptacle that is loaded. So let's go down to the special receptacle right here. Now it happens to be hosted, another one that I should create a non-hosted for, but it doesn't get used that often. So it's looking for a wall. So let's put it on this back wall right there. You can see it, the joy of hosting as it gets confused in the middle there. So we'll put it like right there. And this is just a special symbol that would be on our symbol list that says this is a special receptacle. And it could have a NEMA rating, but we're going to label it as the range. So what I typically do for this is just throw some text tags. We don't need to be smart tags and all that. We can just use some text tags here. So what I'll do is I'll say something like range 50 amp to give them an idea that it's a 50 amp connection, 50 amp receptacle. And I'll just use a leader and point it down to the range and give it a little shoulder there. Now this one, I will put a text tag on it and say disposal. I've seen some other designers have abbreviations for some of these. If I have room for it, I don't have a problem. Now that section bubble gets in my way a little bit, so I could hide that in this situation. I'll leave it there for now. Disposal, and then the dishwasher. And this one I can just say DW, that typically is descriptive enough. And then the refrigerator, I will typically say something just like refridge. This will be similar to if you're doing any residential type work. You could do something like this. And I have that whole series on my channel about a full residential project, start to finish, that you can watch. So there's refrigerator. Again, we're not circuiting these, we're just showing these. Now, the rest of this ends up being done like a residential dwelling unit. So we have the 6-foot, 12-foot rule, if you're familiar with that. We can't be further than 6 feet away from the end of a wall. We can't be further than 12 feet between the receptacles. And all of those rules, I'll link a good NEC channel in my description below if you want to check out some good coverage of those. And I'm curious what's going on this side wall over here. So I'm going to drop yet another section. Might as well, since we can in Revit. Let's drop a section through here. Treat it like an elevation. And double click that and see what we get for level 2. Just to help narrow down my look. So what we have is pretty much some bookshelves. Bookshelves. This looks like maybe a countertop. So we've got some kind of a bookshelf going on there. Another thing we can do is look at a 3D model of this. One nice way to do that is to maybe surround some devices. And under view up here, you get this little thing called selection box. It isolates the selected elements in the current view, and it creates a 3D isometric view. Right there. Now, it zooms out the entire project, but if I scroll wheel, we can kind of see that it's only taking a portion of this. Now, what's interesting is it puts this blue box in here that is called a section box that I can drag around and enlarge and make smaller my section. Now I want to bring this is the top one. I'm going to bring it down a little bit so I can see inside my room. So there we go. What we're starting to see is this restroom. And if I pull it off to the right, I can see the rest of my room. See that? Start pulling this section box, and there's the arrows. And we're going to make this large enough to see our room. There's the back wall. And here's the other wall. If I go far enough, there we go. Now what I can do is I can use this guy to kind of rotate around, pivot, like that. And I can zoom in and out, and I can see a little better what I've got for bookshelves and countertops. So this is kind of like a desk, built-in desk. Now where you'd put your television, perhaps hang it on the wall here. But this gives us an idea of what's going on there. And then we can also use this view. We can hold down Shift and then use the center mouse button to also pivot or rotate around this view. So now we can get a good idea what's going on in this kitchen. And some of the line types get fat because we have the line style set up for that. So we can go down to get rid of go down to the thin lines, and that sometimes helps it. We've got some of our lights showing up here. So I can lower the ceiling just a smidge to get rid of those lights. There we go. And again, it gives you a really good idea. And this architect has done a nice job of modeling this room. So there's our receptacles. It looks like they're about at the right height. And again, hold down Shift and hold down your mouse scroll button, and you can pivot around. So this gives us a good idea of what's going on here. So what we want to do is get receptacles. We'll probably put one above the counter here, but we're also going to put some underneath because this is considered wall space. Now the wall space is broken by this cabinet, so we only have to be 6 feet away from there. But again, check out that link below to see all these specific dwelling unit receptacle rules. So here's our bookcase, here's our counter and the other bookcase. So we are going to put an above counter, right click on that guy, create similar above here. I still have thin lines on. And then we're going to put regular receptacles below that. So we can click here And this is the bookshelf. So we're going to get a regular receptacle within 6 feet of that. And I'll put one more down this other end. Now, this is all continuous wall space because these windows don't go to the floor. So this is all considered continuous wall space. Now, while I'm at it, I want to make sure I label this 3D view, because otherwise, next time I cut a section box, it will write over this one. So it will always create a 3D view. So I want to title this 3D Studio. And we'll just do that for now so that I can go back to it. For example, I already did the 3D kitchen that you can see here. So if you create a 3D view with a section box, make sure you label it, give it a name, because next time I cut one, it will erase the old one. So I'm just going to show these in here. Normally I would pull out some annotate and some detail lines, and I would start measuring dimensions. Like we have 2'6", and it means I can be up to 9'6" away, something like that. So you can use different ways to lay out your receptacles in a residential unit. Again, it can't be further than 12 feet away. That's 9 feet, so I can be 3 feet away. Let's just say short of 3 feet, right there. And you just go through the rest of this unit doing that. So this one here I can just copy from there. And let's say I go just short of 12 feet to make sure I meet the rule. And then coming in, this is kind of considered probably a hallway, but I like to make sure I get receptacle in here, even if it's a short hallway. So I would most likely put that not on the column. Let's put it on this wall right here. It's close to the panel for wiring. And then in the restroom, we have a washer and dryer, and then we have the sink. I like to put a above counter receptacle, typically on a side wall, like that, rather than a back wall. If you have some ADA accessible units, you also have to look at some of the receptacle placements for that as well. Now, we need a laundry receptacle, and that is going to be here with the washer and dryer. So that is just a standard receptacle. So put that on the back and work with your interiors folks and architect to figure out where the best place for this connection is. Sometimes it's sidewall, but a lot of times the water and waste will be on the side and the electrical will be on the back. But you can get that coordinated if you want, or leave it up to the installer to figure it out, because we may not know which washer and dryer you're getting during design. Now for the dryer, I use another symbol like this for a special receptacle. And that typically ends up being just a 30 amp 208 connection, but that symbol works. So then we can say dryer, 30 amp, and then I can say laundry. And that laundry circuit can be used for the washer. It can be used for plugging in an iron if they can get to it. They may not be able to get to it, so they may have to plug an iron in here or somewhere else in the unit. That dryer, and then the laundry. Now, one other thing you typically will want to do is at least state which one of these are going to be GFCI. Now, you also have arc fault circuit breakers, not receptacles, but arc fault circuit breakers in here. And that kind of thing can be indicated on the actual panel, what I call panel directory. It's not a panel schedule in that it doesn't add up loads, but it does provide a directory. And we will get to that in a future episode. And that's where we might indicate that there'll be an arc fault circuit breaker. Also, you may have some tamper resistant receptacle needs. That can be done on a plan, or it can be done in a general note, or even if you have a set of written specifications, written requirements, it can be there. So not everything has to be tagged right here on the plan, but do it the way that your firm does it. And let's get another GFCI. I'm just going to copy this. It's just text. I don't use built-in labels and receptacles because they get turned sideways, and I prefer to have all of my labels up and down as much as I can. And then this guy, it's going to copy over here. And it covers up the DW, but that's okay because I have the dishwasher called out here with my own DW. So something like that is the basics. Now we also have a mechanical unit. Let's see, go back and see what we have for that. Second floor plan. Now they show it here, but I don't see it in my enlarged plan. Now let's go back and see why. Also, we're going to deal with how to not show these in this plan as well. Hang on to the end and we will show you how to turn these off in this reduced plan and only leave them in the enlarged plan. We need to make sure that we call this something else. This call out, we actually want to call this, we have the 100s here. Let's just call it something like, we're going to start with 10 for our enlarged plans. We're going to call this Enlarged Studio Plan Power. So we will start our enlarged rooms, units here, 10, 11, 12, and so on. And again, these numbers are just so that things are sorted in a logical order in my project browser. When we drag them onto sheets, we're going to get rid of that 10. So let's go back to the enlarged studio plan, and we need to make sure we have mechanical units turned on in this view template. So down here, we need to go to our Revit link because that mechanical is linked in. Right there, HVAC. Right now it's set up by host view. And that reminds me, we do want to halftone these and underlay these links. So we want to go to a custom view and go to the model, custom the model, and we want to go down and make sure we turn on, we don't want ducts on, but we do want mechanical equipment turned on. You can drag that out if you need to. We do want mechanical equipment to show, okay, so that we can connect it. And it doesn't show yet, so now we need to make sure that we have our view range set up properly for this room. So let's go see where that mechanical unit is to get an idea. We could also cut a section and look how high that is, but let's try this. Let us tab over that. Click it and see that it's up at 9 feet. We need to have the top of our view range at least 9 feet. And just for fun, let's go ahead and take a look at this section again that we did and see how high. So now we're starting to see some of this stuff. So this level goes clear up to 1810 to the next level. So we want to be a little bit below that. Let's just go up to 18 feet and see if that works for us. We want to go up to 18 feet on this. So the associated level, and let's go to 18. Now we could go to just level 3 or next level, thing called level above. We could just go to level above because we know it's level 3, but this way we know it works. So there's our unit, and we want to get this connected. So, and now we go back to our second floor power, and we can find one of these mechanical units like this and just right click, create similar, put it in our studio plan right here. And now this may not have a number associated with it, or the number may change depending on which unit we're in. So we're just going to call it a generic HRU, and we can just call it unit. Now, the unit ones are going to be smaller. They're typically not a 3-phase because we only have a single-phase panel. So again, we don't have cut sheets for this, but we're going to say that we do know that they are going to be a 2000 VA system at 208 2-pole. And we're just going to call this HRU unit. We are not going to schedule this. We don't need to put this on the equipment schedule because it's not going to show a circuit or anything like that. We don't need that on the equipment schedule. It would just muddy the waters. So we're going to leave that off of the equipment schedule. But we can tag this HRU unit. And again, this will be accounted for in our load center. And let's check that. We have 3,000 for the heating cooling. Well, it's really only 2,000. So we can fix that, and that will change it in all of the studios. That's the joy of having that as a type parameter. I only have to change it once for all studios. So that's the last of the electrical connections for here. Now, if you're doing technology as well, you may want to put some TV outlets, things like that in. We're going to leave that for a separate set of plans. So right now we're just doing electrical. But back to the second floor, I just want to say that we would do the same thing for each of these other units that we want to call typical. And I'm not going to do it here to save time, but that's how you would do it. You would do your call out. And in this case, we'd have to call out, go around the elevator for that guy. And this guy, we'd have to go around this hallway trash room is what that is. But similar idea. And then you would have 4 different typical enlarged studio plans or live work units, whatever they are. So the last piece I want to show you on this that I promised is how to turn off these in this view. I typically don't want it shown twice. Now we're going to do like what we did in a previous episode where I turned off the kitchen. We're going to use a filter. Filters are very powerful for controlling visibility. Some people use work sets. Those have limitations, so I use a filter. Basics of a filter are they act like an exception. Like if you read the electrical code, you get, here's the basic rule and there's some exceptions underneath that modify the basic rule. So same thing here. The basic rule of this view is to show things by category. And that's typically how things are, visibility is controlled. For example, visibility graphics overrides. What that means is we're controlling the visibility, whether it's on or off, and we're also controlling some graphical overrides if we want to change the line type or the line style or color. So it's visibility and graphics. We typically turn things on and off by category, but sometimes we need a subdivision of that category. We want electrical fixtures to show up, but not in the units. So how can we pick and choose? Well, that's when a filter comes into play. So what we do is we're in this view template, in this power plan, we're going to put a parameter in each of these unit receptacles and connections that is like a flag that says we only want these to show up in the enlarged view. So what we do is over here under comments, right here, we can say enlarged. Now it's already there because we already have some of those in the kitchen. Enlarged. Now if I say enlarged, then that comment can be read by a filter and say, if it says enlarged, turn it off in this view. So this is the view that I want to create an exception. I want to say, show all the electrical fixtures unless they say enlarged. So the way we do that, go into the view template and go into filters right here. It's a whole separate tab, filters. Now I already have some filters in here for showing underground wiring and conduit. That's already built in. I need to add another filter in here for the enlarged view. So if I don't have a filter made yet, I need to go to edit or new. I already have one called enlarged. This is a list of all the filters that we could apply to our view. This is a list of the ones that have been applied to this view. So we're going to go into look at all the filters. Enlarged. The way this works, if I click on enlarged, you select what categories that you want to include in this filter. And so what we've included are electrical fixtures. And we can even include lighting devices and lighting fixtures for when we start doing lighting plans. I don't want to include equipment because I want my electrical equipment to show up in either case. So I'm just looking through electrical fixtures and lighting. And if I have multiple rules, I'm anding them. Or you can do an or. You can apply a logic. We only have one rule. We have all selected, which means all of these, all the electrical fixtures and lighting fixtures and devices, all of these in the comment section contains the word enlarged. So these are all the if statements. If all the selected lighting devices, fixtures, and electrical fixtures, if the comments field, the comments parameter contains the word enlarged, then that is selected as part of this filter. So that's how I select what is filtered. And so I'm going to add that enlarged filter to this view. So I'm saying these are the filters I want in this view. Now, what happens to that? First of all, you can enable and disable a filter very easily with that if you just want to turn it on and off. But what do I want to happen with these ones that says enlarged? Do I want the visibility to be on or off? I can make them halftone. I can override the line type and patterns. I can make them colored. I can make them dashed, whatever. I just want to turn them off. So enlarged, off. That receptacle right there just turned off because it has the enlarged flag on it. So I just need to go through each of these and include enlarged. Now, you may think that's cumbersome to do. We only have to do it once and it's done. And we can also, you can use some selection tools to surround them. So I can hit all of these here. If I happen to select too much, I can filter out and just pick the electrical fixtures. But say these electrical fixtures, I can hit them all at once. Go over to comments, and now I can use the drop down. So it's really not that hard to do. But I'm doing it in this view so I can watch them disappear. And let's go ahead and do it with, let's go ahead, and what's happening is I'm picking my linked Revit model. So I can, because it's pinned, I can say don't select pinned elements over here. Now I can easily select all this stuff. Now I was careful not to pick the load center because it is an electrical fixture, but I want it to show up in both views. So I'm not going to flag it. I'm not going to include the enlarged flag. So let's go into filter. Oh, I have equipment and fixtures. So let's go ahead and comment enlarged. Now in my lighting plan, I may go through and also make this only in the enlarged view. So that's for the lighting plan. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but the rest of these, I can hit the enlarged button and make these all disappear in this view. And same with these two guys. Comments enlarged. There we go, and we left this in. So now they only show up in the enlarged plan. It didn't affect those at all. And they don't show up here. So that's as far as we're going to go on this second floor power plan. If you're enjoying this project series, take a look at this residential project series that I'm linking here on the screen. And until next time, thanks for watching.